we are in draft season as the Cowboys prepare to decide what they will do with the number 26 overall pick in this year's NFL's annual selection meeting, otherwise known as the NFL Draft. Appreciate you joining us on Odyssey and the Odyssey app. The truckred.com text line 877-881-1053. 877-881-1053. Coming up here in about 18 minutes, we will go around the National Football League, get you caught up on some news and notes there. But we start here when it comes to yet another potential quarterback being looked at by the Dallas Cowboys. This time we've heard the idea of Hendon Hooker, the quarterback from the University of Tennessee. Hello, RJ Choppy. Now, what's to be taken from Jerry's new stance when it comes to drafting quarterbacks?
Yeah, this comes courtesy Calvin Watkins of the Dallas Morning News. Apparently, Jerry Jones has a little bit of regret of not drafting enough quarterbacks, like over his tenure as the owner and general manager of the Dallas Cowboys. So, Jerry Jones apparently refers to Coach Mike McCarthy, who learned the Green Bay Packers way of drafting a quarterback pretty frequently, in fact. That philosophy came from Ron Wolf, who was the Packers GM from 91 to 2001. And Wolf drafted in that 10-year tenure 7 quarterbacks, right? And obviously 6 while Brett Favre was still, in fact, the starter. So Jones apparently wants to embrace this philosophy, saying, quote, "If I look back over my early years with the Cowboys, I should have drafted more quarterbacks. If I had to do it over again, I'd have a quarterback coming all the time just for that purpose, just to have him coming," is what Jones says. So with that being the case, right, he also said at a different point, this is Wolf, said in 2016, "Looking from afar, the best quarterback in the game is a sixth round draft choice, and that should alert everybody. Then you look at what the Cowboys accomplished with Prescott. I mean, it tells you what you should do. Those who do not know history are doomed to repeat it." So with that understanding, it seems like Jerry is starting to come to the idea, hey man, just take some flyers on quarterbacks from time to time. And I think that I'm sure he could point to Mike McCarthy and his time with the Packers, but I also think that some of that is inspired by Dak Prescott.
I'm about to say he did it with Dak.
And so it seems like this is going to, at least if you let Jerry tell it, because Jerry be talking, we do know that. It seems like this might kind of change the MO of this organization. And I guess with the timing, and maybe it's just because of this is when we're learning it, does that make you think that they might go with like a flyer quarterback? Maybe day 2, day 3, something like that.
Let's see. We're getting until Dak Prescott will be entering into his 8th year as a member of the Dallas Cowboys. It'll be his 8th year.
Am I getting ahead of myself? What do you think about the thought process itself? Like that idea that, like, because again, Ron Wolf, 7 quarterbacks over the span of 10 years, right? Like that is draft capital that you're utilizing that way. Do you agree with that thought process to begin with?
That's tough because he was fortunate to have a model of stability, and Brian Broaddus knows this better than anybody. I mean, you look at what the Packers were able to do for the better part of 30 years have been secured by the services of Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, and the model of stability that they've had with their quarterbacks there. So you can afford, when you have that level of consistency based on the quarterback that you have, to take a chance or two on a quarterback, just because you do believe that whatever situation you may find yourself in, it won't be so bad enough to where you have to go to that quarterback, and maybe you can use that for something else. The Cowboys have been so horrendous when it comes to the finding of a quarterback that even if they decide to take a flyer on one, they may not necessarily be good at being able to do it.
But I think that's part of it, right? Like in the draft, it seems like the best drafters recognize that you are only but so good. Even the best of us are going to miss a good amount. So I guess the idea in, ramping up the number of attempts you take is you can only be but so good at trying to figure this out. You give yourself a better chance of finding good quarterbacks by doing it more often. You know what I mean? Like if you feel like, oh man, I'm not all that good at it, well then you probably need some iteration then in order to get the job done. And so I do think in that way, there is some interesting ideas there, but understand the way that the Cowboys go about things. If you lean so heavily on the draft, taking portions of that draft and using it constantly at this position that's high value, right? It's a very premium position, don't get me wrong, but then also constantly putting value there where you know you're probably not going to utilize, let's use that 10-year, 7 out of 10 years, you're probably not going to use 3, 4, 5 of those quarterbacks. You're just doing it to give yourself the opportunity of having the great one when you get one. That is a little bit of a risk.
So let's think about it from the context of what the NFL has done trend-wise when it comes to selecting quarterbacks and what the overall trend has been. Can you find a young quarterback, most likely on a rookie deal, to come in and be able to show you enough as an organization that he can be a performer at the position to where you could take some chances with your roster building to put enough around him to make things happen, whether that be extending resources offensively or strengthening a defensive unit like how Seattle was able to do so when Russell Wilson was there and helping him win a championship during his early years in Seattle. That, to me, is something the Cowboys have been unwilling to do because they've had so much difficulty finding one that when they have found one, Tony Romo, they have stuck with him for years upon years while not investing in that position to try and see if we did, what could it look like if we invested other resources around a younger player if there was an opportunity to take a flyer on said quarterback in that way.
So it sounds like you're in on this perspective then?
Yeah, I am. After thinking about it a little bit more based on what we've seen around the NFL, yeah, the premise and the idea is the right one. This organization, though, doesn't necessarily take that kind of a swing all too often.
Well, then what do we take from this? Is this Jerry talking, or do you think that this could be a change in the way that the organization goes about things? Because on the truckwreck.com text line, remember, you can always get involved, 877-881-1053. Somebody mentions that's what Green Bay did to get Aaron Rodgers. And from the 573, they mentioned Mike McCarthy and, of course, like the organization in whole, flipped Matt Flynn for a second rounder, a guy that was just kind of on your team, came in, played well, and then you traded him off for draft assets. You kind of recuperated your draft assets in that way.
Now let's go back real quick, 979, because remind me of the year that Aaron Rodgers was drafted. This is 2023. He was drafted in 2000. Was it 2005? I want to say 2004. I want to say 2005.
05.
Yeah,
right.
2005. So remember that time with the Packers there, because remember how the Packers at the time, much like how they're going through with Aaron Rodgers right now, they weren't for sure if Brett Favre was going to continue to play. And there was this whole song and dance as we got later into his career about whether or not he would play. So the Packers were kind of in a position where they had to think about some of their future relative to their quarterback having indecision
I think
about him playing.
Sure, but I think it matches in like that willingness to go and just get one just in case, right? Like have you a fall guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it does seem like that is some of the idea here, part and parcel, is that at any given point, the idea is you have somebody that you feel comfortable with giving a shot, seeing if they can have it. And I imagine that if you then have a quarterback who's like, yeah, I'm not sure, it's a little bit harder for that quarterback to hold you over barrel because you're like, well, we'll just go see about what this dude's hitting for. You know what I mean? And of course, that doesn't necessarily mean you get one of the better quarterbacks of a generation, but it does give you the opportunity and the willingness to be able to have a little wiggle room there. Something that the Cowboys have not done well.
Correct.
Right, is have given themselves some wiggle room, some fallbacks, so that they are not held over a barrel in negotiation situations.
From the 469 KG, Kenny Pickett is that example, especially how they ended the season. What was it, 6-2 or 7-2? The Steelers situation is a little bit different.
That dude was cooked
as well because Trubisky was awful, and they had thought that he could be a bridge for Pickett to come in there eventually, but they were drafting Pickett as to be the guy for the future going forward there.
Yeah, first-round draft picks are very rarely we'll wait and see.
Exactly.
You draft someone as a first-rounder, you're anticipating them playing.
And Trubisky was able to just speed up the process because, well, he was just awful for the most part. But, yeah, the organization itself, again, I go back to how comfortable they are with this quarterback. And, yes, you have to start thinking about some of the ideas about 2 and 3 years down the road, especially if he does not have the amount of sustained deep playoff success that you want to have, and whether or not you need to make a decision to turn over the roster and, in essence, start over, because the Cowboys have not been willing to do that. Jerry Jones just a few weeks ago talked about living in the middle and being comfortable with living in the middle. So they're not necessarily willing to take that big, bold swing to take a flyer on a quarterback to even be in a position, if things go awry, that they would go down the road of playing a younger quarterback to be able to remake some of the roster around him with resources that could help him be in a better position to win, even on a rookie deal. The Cowboys just simply haven't been willing to do that in that way.
Okay, so if you are if we are to believe that Jerry Jones is actually thinking about, all right, this is something that we should alter the Cowboys' MO into. The Cowboys are now a team that every once in a while takes their shot at quarterback. Your assertion here is that they have not set themselves to be able to start that. Like, this is one of those, we will start doing this as a Cowboys organization in 2024. Is that how you're viewing this, or is this they might start this year and look at somebody like a Max Duggan in the middle rounds?
That's how I would view that, yeah.
The former idea of like they need to get their affairs in order, and then come 2024, they might start doing this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they're still, in my mind, in a position where, for example, for Prescott this year, if you want to, you could pull a lever and free up $22 million in cap space, which means you're going to be committed to him for at least another year or two, unless you decide to restructure his deal entirely going into, to next year and bringing him back, or not bringing him back, but extending him to lessen your cap hit, which means you're further committing to Dak Prescott down the road. So I just don't see it. They should, based on what we've seen, be more willing to take a chance and take a flyer on a quarterback. I just see, based on how this team is operating, the observation of them, they are very comfortable where they are right now.
I'm very interested, and we'll be talking to Aisha Morrison, our draft correspondent on the Get Right. I think I've just dubbed her that. She's going to have to deal with it at 9 p.m. this evening. I'm interested because there's a lot of people, like, there's someone on the truckwreck.com text line that's like, their process should be whatever it takes to get Caleb Williams. I think that's the antithesis of the conversation that we're having here.
Yeah.
Right. The idea is that give yourself more opportunities to get quarterbacks. It's not lock in on one, because that's just a different iteration of what you've done here, right? It's just kind of lock in on a quarterback. Now, if it's a draft pick, you're locking in on that draft pick. But again, you're not keeping that openness to give yourself multiple iterations of getting at this. But I'm interested in who people like, right? Because I know Hendon Hooker has gotten a lot of love from the people that we value in this scouting process, namely Brian Broaddus, right? He seems like he's one of those top 100 guys, and maybe a, second, third round quarterback, depending on like who feels like they need the need. Because it seems like for quarterbacks, we're in that top class is bifurcated, by the way, right, into a top and a bottom of that top class. But there's 4 guys in there. You've got your guys that people feel great about, that it's like, give it a shot, and it probably has the highest success of working, which is Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, in whatever order you would like to put them in. And then after that, there's a space, there's a gap, and then you've got like toolsy guys that do need some work, which is Will Levis and Anthony Richardson. And after that, like,
who both probably will go in the first round.
And yes, so like beyond that, because again, we're not talking about first round quarterbacks. That's we need a quarterback now. We anticipate them playing. We're talking about day 2. Maybe day 3, because a lot of people on the truckwreck.com text line have loved bringing up Brock Purdy. And someone even said maybe Brock Purdy and the way he played is part of what opened up Jerry's eyes. Possibility, right? But I'm wondering, if they do go down that route, who would they even maybe take a shot at? And maybe the point isn't that it doesn't matter who it is in particular, but I'm interested. Is it a Max Duggan, right? Local guy, maybe can come through and over time give you that look. Maybe Hendon Hooker, right? Like, but I wonder who are the guys that they might even be looking at. Should they actually take into account this strategy this year?
Yeah, some of the deeper quarterbacks in this draft, Malik Cunningham, also, as we mentioned, Hendon Hooker.
Malik Cunningham played where? Is he Louisville?
That's right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I was about to say it, but I was like, let me take a second and make sure, because I don't want to look stupid.
Jaron Hall, BYU. Maybe the local kid. Max Duggan. Maybe that's one that you take a flyer on as you get deeper into the draft. Maybe you look at like you said, day 2, getting into your third and fourth rounds, and maybe that's a guy that could be there. I wouldn't mind taking a flyer on Duggan if that's the case there. Be a cool story for him, I guess.
Well, either way, I mean, this draft, maybe next year's draft, we'll start to see if this is really Jerry Jones having like some level of epiphany, or maybe this is simply Jerry be talking, because he do be talking.
Jerry be talking.
He do be talking.
It's the Get Right with Reggie KG right here on 105 through the Fan. Coming up next.
Ooh, Fresno State's quarterback is, what's my guy's name? It's going to upset me. That's great point, YouTube. Fresno State's quarterback is that type of player. I just cannot remember his name for the life of me, and it's frustrating me. Jake Haener. There it is. Ooh.
Oh, maybe they should take a flyer on DTR.
You just love DTR, don't you? You know how many times you brought up DTR to me over the last season? The last season of basketball.
It was a lot of fun to watch at UCLA. A lot of fun to watch, man.